Have you thought this through?
No way will that work.
Are you sure? Is there any money in that?
You'll never make any money doing that. How are you going to pay the mortgage? Just get a job.
You're going to try to sell that? Why can't you be normal like everybody else?
All right. Were your parents morons too?
The savvy entrepreneur to the rescue.
Congratulations. That really turned out well.
Really good job.
I'm going to admit it. I'm surprised.
You know, I wish I thought of that.
I never thought anyone would.
How did you do that?
I'm so glad you're pursuing your dream.
I wish I had the courage to follow my dreams.
Hey there, folks. Good morning. Welcome to the Savvy Entrepreneur Show. We're broadcasting here on WLCB 101.5 FM, based in the Chicago, Milwaukee area. If you're an entrepreneur or a small business person or thinking about becoming one, this show is for you. I'm Doris Nagel, your host for the next hour. I'm a crazy entrepreneur myself, and I've helped lots of startups and small businesses over the past 30 years. The Savvy Entrepreneur Show has two goals: to share helpful information and resources, and to inspire, to make your journey as an entrepreneur faster and easier, and maybe just a little bit more fun. To help with that, I have guests on the show every week who are willing to share their stories and their advice. And this week's guest is Tamika Franklyn. She's the CEO and founder of a company called Precision Franchise, LLC. And she joins me by phone from New York today. Now, a few words about Precision Franchising. The company guides entrepreneurs to help them own proven franchise businesses. It has access to over 3,500 different franchise business opportunities and provides one-on-one consultations to determine the best model for their clients' lifestyles and goals, and then makes introductions to franchisors. Tamika says she's passionate about this business because there are lucrative opportunities in franchising, but she realized that she didn't know anyone personally who was familiar with this path of business ownership, and she couldn't understand why. She came to realize one of the key reasons was because there weren't many people who looked or sounded like her who were actually helping educate the community on this successful path to business ownership. She's passionate about taking this knowledge back to women and people of color, as they make up only 28% of the franchise industry. Her goal is to help people in those communities understand that owning a franchise is well within their grasp. With that introduction, Tamika, thanks so much for being on the Savvy Entrepreneur Show today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I think franchising is interesting as well. It's something people talk about, right? I mean, people think of McDonald's as a franchise, but it's so much more. And I know we're going to talk about that on the show today. But first, let's start with what Precision Franchise is. What is it, and who do you help, and how do you help them?
Awesome. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to speak to your audience, and to give a little further insight on the industry and my business and what it is that I do. So again, the company is Precision Franchise, and I am a franchise consultant or broker, as we are called. And I assist you with owning your own business within the franchise industry. And this could be with an actual franchise, or it can be with what we will call business opportunities, which will still be proven business models. So a little bit about my process as a consultant is I take the time to really sit with you in my consultations to find out what your lifestyle is, what your goals, and I ask you particular questions so that it would further help me to be able to match you with the right concept that's going to work well for you, just based on everything that we have already discussed. I also have resources and tools available on my website, and resources that I use as well to aid me in this process. So what I like to say, I know that a lot of people are familiar with the DISC assessment, or if they're going for, I don't know, a job or just one of those type of assessments where they ask you a particular question that kind of puts you in these, it creates a profile
Yeah,
for
so
you.
Tamika, talk a little bit about, you said the DISC assessment? Is that right?
So, yes, it's DISC. It uses several sciences from the DISC assessment, where it asks you particular questions, and based on your answers, it comes up with a profile for you. So,
Oh, so,
yeah.
so some people, it may say, well, you're not really probably the right kind of person to be successful franchising.
No, so what it would do is it just creates a profile. So we have four, so let's say, based on your question, it shows, okay, you're an achiever, or it gives you like that level. So it's achiever, there's belonger, there's four different personality types.
Oh.
And under those types is where it has particular characteristics for each one. So again, it's achiever, it's societal, emulator, and belonger. So let's say you fall under achiever, and I'll use that as an example because that is one of the I don't want to say best characteristics, but it seems like a lot of franchises, and it does depend on the franchise, they really like someone that has that. Belonger is another one as well. But like achiever, they'll have something where it's like, okay, they're motivated by achievement, or they're very goal oriented, or if they prefer unique, scalable, quality service, business to business, or practical solutions. So they just have certain points with them where you probably wouldn't show someone that has these characteristics something that is, let's say, more nonprofit driven, more passion driven. Maybe you would do that for a societal.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? So each one has their criteria. So I like using that because I get a lot of feedback where, someone, once one of my candidate clients would use it, that, we have our follow-up call, that, normally I would get, oh my gosh, that it was so spot on, it was creepy. Or, I really agreed. Or you might get one or two that's like, most of it was okay, but I don't know. There were certain things. But you know what? Even with those, I feel as though even the thing that they wasn't sure about, they're just kind of hung up on like maybe a word or a phrase, but then it totally makes sense. Like, but it's a cool tool. And again, it's just a tool. It's also used in aiding me in selecting the right opportunities to show you.
Interesting. So, you have lots of franchises that you work with, that you can match potential business people with, right? That's kind of, you're a broker, but I guess I also think of you kind of as a matchmaker, maybe.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I get matchmaker. I get one person said I'm a lighthouse.
Well, okay. Well, so, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what a franchise is and isn't. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people think of McDonald's, right? And here's the Big Mac, and here's when we offer breakfast, and these are the sandwiches, and this is how you price it, and here's the food that we're going to provide you to do this, and it's a template, and it's not like you can do very much to change it. But I think people don't realize maybe that franchising is so much broader than that. So give some examples of different kinds of franchises, and talk about why they're franchises.
Yeah, so one thing that you touched on that I definitely want to say is that when it comes to franchises, and you're right, the first thing people would think about is food, whether it's McDonald's, or it's always food. And with that comes the thought of it having to be a brick and mortar, and of course also having to have a ton of equity or money just to show that you're able to even get into that franchise and own it. And what they do not realize is that there's a lot of franchises where you don't even need to have a physical location. Like you can work from home, and it's across over 40 industries. So the reason why the process that I do take you through is important is because I want to be able to also tap into your passion as well. Because it's very likely that we'll be able to find a business that's going to fit those needs and those goals. So there are franchises where let's say it's in beauty, where I had a webinar that featured a franchise that was all about lashes. But you'll be so surprised of how they actually started off as more of a technology company turned beauty. And because of that, it really sets them apart in the market. And it's a really unique and very lucrative business. It's a well-run oil machine, really. And I have a client now that's looking to do several of those. But that's something that's not going to pop in your mind when you hear franchises. Okay. If you're very passionate about health, and for whatever reason, you're very passionate about, maybe the elder care or just anything in the medical field, there's franchises where it's, all about home care, or even medical billing. Like there's just so many.
Wow. That's a franchise?
Yeah, there's one in particular that I'm thinking about is what we would call a business opportunity. And the main difference is that there's not a franchise disclosure document associated with business opportunities, and you won't have to pay royalty. However, they have a proven business model. So they're still going to have all the setup of what a franchise would have as far as, hey, so long as you execute, this is everything that you get along with this business and you're going to be successful. So I do show both.
Interesting. Well, this is probably a good transition to talk a little bit about what makes a business a franchise. I mean, I'm assuming there are certain kinds of things that you typically see with a franchise. So talk a little bit about that.
When you have a franchise, it is regulated, right? It's regulated by the state, federal and state. So the franchise is the agreement. This is the technical term for it. So it is an agreement and license between two legally independent parties with defined rights, terms, responsibilities, and obligations. And again, it is governed by federal and state laws. So what happens is that, with that comes the FDD, which is the franchise disclosure document. And that's going to have everything that you need to know. There's 23 items, and every item is a description of what you would find within that item. And, so a quick example for that, like item 19, a very popular item, a very important item, but not every franchise discloses that. But I like to show the franchises that does, because it shows the past performance. So you will get to see all the numbers, etc. So again, every item is going to have that. If you are a franchise, you have to have an FDD, and it's something that has to be updated every single year. What also comes with franchises is royalties, and every franchise have different royalties. I would say an average royalty is anywhere between 5 for the very low, but I would say between 5 and 8% is average royalty fee. And that is just the fee that you would pay normally on a monthly basis to the franchise.
What does that royalty payment cover? I mean, why do you need to pay a royalty payment to a franchisor?
Well, one, the whole reason why you want to own a franchise or you get into franchise because you're not recreating a wheel. The most important things that you want to definitely look for in franchises is what is the support? What is it that I'm getting in being a part of this franchise? What is the culture? So your royalties goes towards that and whatever and more, just whatever it is that franchise is offering you to be an owner in the franchise, within that franchise. So
partly the right to use the name, maybe, and whatever processes they have, and
all of the above.
Yeah.
All of the above. So, there's a lot of franchises that part of their support is that maybe they have a call center on your behalf.
Oh.
Yeah. There's training. There's tons of training within franchises, So it's just, and the list can go on, but again, it'll be different for each one. But those are some of the important things that you would be getting when you own a franchise business.
So like maybe access to their software system to book appointments.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to guess that there's a lot of differences between franchises. Can you give any examples of some differences between franchises?
So yeah, so they are different, and each one, and this is part of what I take you through as well. Well, let's say you did choose, like, hey, I really like the franchise on for healthcare. It really speaks to me. As far as a caregiver, I'm not directly a caregiver, but hey, I'm very passionate about it, and I would like to know more. So part of that call is the franchisor call, and I'm usually on that call, is to find out deeper on what this particular franchise is going to be providing you. So for example, I actually had a call yesterday with someone who at first it seemed, and this is why actually it's so important to really understand your goals and your passions, etc. Because when I first spoke with them, they were really fixated on the business being passive. They have like real estate investments, and they really want a passive concept. Sorry. So you would think. So I thought about that, but based on everything that she has told me and the business assessment, I knew that healthcare was important to her as well. So I added that along with, some others that I thought would fit her criteria. So it seemed as though she might have been leaning towards one of our vending machine models, and which would have provided her a lot of flexibility. But then the call we had yesterday, she was completely blown away by this brand for the level of support that they're providing, the fact that they have inbound and outbound calling, which caught my attention because, to be honest, I feel as a person who's always had a sales background, I know how important lead generation is and follow up, etc. And I knew that there's a lot of franchises that does help with, some of the call centers as far as the inbound leads, maybe web leads and things of that nature. But I've never heard of them actually doing outbound. And I thought that was significant. So now what that does for me, that makes me think, first, I would have thought, you know what, you kind of need to be comfortable with sales to be in this industry. So I may not show that to someone who shies away from sales. But after learning about how much support they do in the marketing and the inbound and outbound, actually, I can show this to someone who is like, you know what, I'm okay with sales, but it's just not my thing. But as far as, the brand, this is what I want. This is what I'm passionate about. Now I know that, hey, this is something that I can show them. Yeah. And she's completely passionate about the fact that, one, she doesn't have to have a brick and mortar. Yes, you should want to, be a little more hands-on in the beginning, but that's just for your business. You can definitely, usually after a year, it's advised that at that time, if you want to add someone to kind of sort of take your place, but to give it your all in the first year. But it just goes to show you that after, going through it and really finding out that they're supporting you with their web-based software, again, the outbound and inbound calling, the web lead, they're designing any kind of marketing material that you need. the recruiting. They're helping you with the recruiting. They're giving you the criteria and the formula of where you want to be as far as what you should be paying your caregivers. It's very, it's very insightful to understand all of that. And yeah, and so for them, if you think about as far as royalties or anything like that, these are the type of things that you want to consider as far as
Yeah.
one, can I see myself in the business? And two, what is the level of support,
Yeah.
that I'm getting in the business?
Well, I really appreciate you giving that example because I think that really gets, really, it certainly helped me, and I'm sure other people listening, it helped them really understand kind of some of the range of things that you need to think about when you're choosing a franchise or even deciding if franchising is right for you. But, as you were talking, one of the things that is clear is that you are very passionate about this, Tamika. Why do you think you're so passionate about it? I mean, what is it about it that gives you a buzz and makes you excited to talk about this with people?
I'm excited about it because it just feels like the unknown. I'm just shocked at how successful, I know that people are in the industry, and the fact of, learning about so many years ago that franchises or proven business models, however you want to call it, can have up to a 90% success rate. And I've always grown up, just in business and, inspired myself to be an entrepreneur. And, so I go to different types of classes and stuff when I was younger. And I've always known that, hey, we always know that 50% of all small businesses fail within the first, we all heard that. I've never heard of anything that has a 90% success rate.
Right.
That alone is like, wait, what?
Right.
Like, why doesn't everyone know this? So then when I got a little bit, deeper into it and really wanted to understand, I started realizing that, wow, as far as women and people of color, we're not represented at all in the industry. And it's like, so it's over 77% white men. And
Wow.
yeah, and yes, but and I look at that and I'm like, and then it's a 90% success rate, and it's like, well, why don't we know more about it? And honestly, I just feel like it's just simply just that it's not people are just not going out in the communities and speaking about it. It's like you just kind of don't know what you don't know. And if I went to a networking event, for example, I like to give this. It's like, when I used to be in insurance and I would go to networking events, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. If you've ever attended, you would run into real estate agents, you would run into, there are dime a dozen real estate agents, insurance agents. When have you run into someone that could tell you yeah, I basically essentially sell franchises, or I would be able to help you own your own business? And, as a franchise.
I haven't, which is why I thought you would be phenomenal to have on the show. And it's eye-opening. It's great. What are some of the pros of owning a franchise? I mean, obviously 90% success rate is a really attractive pro.
Mhm.
But what are some of the other pros? And then also talk about some of the cons of owning a franchise.
So I would say the pros, I would start with just not reinventing the wheel. It basically accelerates the startup phase. I think a lot of people do not think about the fact of, if you just decided, okay, I make great cupcakes, so I want to open up a cupcake store,
I have a client who has that. Actually, it's pound cakes, but that's what he says. He makes the best pound cakes. But he doesn't have a clue of how to get started.
Right. So, and there's nothing wrong. Please, anyone who owns a cupcake store, this is awesome. You're awesome. But
Right.
what I'm saying is what I think a lot of people don't think about is everything that's needed. It's not just about you making a cupcake. It's like, okay, Is it brand, it's about you branding. It's about you finding the location, the cost it takes to get that just started, that ramp up cost, your processes. Like, what is your process? Do you have a team? Marketing,
Yeah. Building a
there's
website and all the social media
all
and
of it,
everything, right?
all of it. So there's just a lot of things that you may not think about. And for some reason, people do not realize the importance of working capital as well, because you can't just go in just the amount that you think is going to cost, right? It's like things happen and, you definitely, yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So I think that it greatly minimizes that, because what you're doing is you're executing a system that has already been proven.
Right.
A lot of times, again, depending on the franchises, they're going to you don't have to, there's no guesswork in, well, who are going to be the suppliers for whatever business, the products, the services that you have. It's there. You know exactly where you're getting things and things of that nature.
Yeah. I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were both lamenting, he's an entrepreneur too, and we were both lamenting about how much money we have spent in marketing, trying different, it's almost like throwing stuff on the wall, hoping one of the approaches will stick. If I could have had a crystal ball and somebody telling me, Doris, to do this, you really need to do this. And not just because I say so, but because we have done this n numbers of times and we've been through all the different possibilities and we know this is the one that works the best. I mean, it would have been so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are some of the problems. I would say it's, you're being in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So you do have that freedom. I think, again, just the cost of the ramp up, which actually puts you in the black a lot sooner, than starting from scratch. And you're already going in with the information. You already have the data. I always say what I'm doing is I'm not selling you a franchise. I am providing you with all the data, the information that you need to know about various franchises that make sense for you so that you can make an informed decision. Yeah. So you're going in with everything basically at your fingertips, that you're able to make that decision on whether or not this is going to make sense for you. And then you have that pre-opening support as well. They help you tremendously with your launch and leading up to your launch date. And you have ongoing support. A lot of franchises, they have coaches and mentors that you are assigned to, within the brand as well. That's something, again, a lot of people wouldn't know. And I would say, as far as the cons, is if you're a person where it's you just want to be totally independent. You just want to no, I like blue, or I like pink, and I think it should be pink. Or I just I hear what you're saying, but I think it should be better this way. If you are focused and dead set on doing things completely, you want to go rogue, then franchising is not for you.
Yeah, I got a funny example I have to share. I am a SCORE mentor, and SCORE is an organization that
I love SCORE.
Executives who work under the umbrella of the U.S. Small Business Administration. It was a woman who wanted to own a restaurant, and she gave some examples of franchised restaurants, and then she said, but what I really want is my daughter and I really want to create new dishes. And I thought, I don't know. Maybe there's a restaurant franchise where you could submit your idea and it gets evaluated. And she was very excited about the fact that they could experiment in the kitchen and come up with all these new dishes, as though somehow they could buy a Noodles and Company franchise or something and start introducing new things just because it sounded like fun.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good example. And I mean, and some of them, some franchises surprise you. Like I had one that I was surprised where this concept was all about natural remedies. So they have like CBD and the Keva and stuff like that. A wide range of products. So basically, they're more so like a local health store, as opposed to The one thing I thought that was interesting is that within their model, even though now typically with franchises, it's like, okay, here's the stuff, this is what it is, there's no changes or alterations or anything like that. But they actually allow, if you are like, let's say you have a cousin that's like, look, I'm telling you, I use this cream every day. It does miracles. I honestly think that you guys should look at it. And it's great. Can I offer this product? They will actually analyze that. They will take that and, they'll take it back to their headquarters. They have their own testing and their own process. And they'll come back to you and they say, you know what? We've tested it. We like it. We think it's okay. What we'll do is we'll trial it in your store for whatever the time frame is. And if it does well, then you can have the opportunity where it's not only going to be in your store because they're adding it to the franchise. It can be for everywhere, for all the franchises.
Wow,
Which
and
I
then
thought
you
was
can get
amazing. Yeah. So there are opportunities sometimes that happens like that, but you definitely can't go in with that mindset of, well, this is what I want to do. Like, then no, I would typically say that no, franchises is not for you then.
Right, exactly. Why is franchising, do you think, a particularly great option for moms and women in general?
I think it's a great option because of some of the things that we already touched on. As far as that level of support and the culture is something that's really going to speak to moms. I actually had a webinar where I had a few brands on, and it was all about moms. Moms and franchising is what I called it, and they talked about how a day in the life and just their journey within the franchises and why it worked well for them. And these were moms where we're not talking about, they got teenagers. No, I mean, we even had a moment where one of the little kids came on our live, it was, and I mean, but it just shows you that's like, yeah, this can be you. Like, yes, sometimes they join you on our Zoom calls and things of that nature. But yeah, I think that, because of the fact that there's so many franchises that offer that level of flexibility where you're able to schedule the time around your life and have the franchisor be such a great support and support system for you, and again that culture, that's what makes franchises in particular great for moms and we're just people with family, that they have to have that type of balance, but they need that support.
I'm curious. So if I said, for example, I only have 30 hours a week to devote, are there franchises out there that would be able to accommodate that?
Absolutely. So, well, 30 hours, honestly, it can be considered a lot. I mean,
all right. Well, 20 hours. I only have 20 hours a week.
So yeah. So what we would consider that is you're looking for passive. So this is something that I would also find out when during my consultations, or if you went on my website and you filled out like a questionnaire. That's going to be one of the questions as well. So that way I know that for someone like you, I'm not going to show you any franchises that are going to require, full-time hands-on efforts. So yes, there are a lot of opportunities where it is where it is passive ownership. I'm not passive ownership, but passive is what we will call it. And you are able to, and it'll tell you. Some of them would actually say like, passive for us is, at least 15 hours, which is totally so those are the type of things I would look for.
When you say passive, I'm sort of thinking, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV and this thing is working for me, but it's not quite that passive, right? I mean, it's passive means something less than full time, I guess.
Yes. So it just means that the business does not require you to have to put in, 40 plus hours, a week,
Gotcha.
whether it's managing or, again, depending on the franchise, whether it's a brick and mortar or not, it's not going to require, you to be in there.
So, what are some of the key questions that people who are interested in franchising should ask themselves before heading in this direction?
I would say you want to make sure that well, one, are you ready to own? You know what I mean? What's your mindset? Do you have an entrepreneurial mindset? As far as ready, anything that as far as your criteria of being a franchise owner, not even a franchise owner, just a business owner, is this, are you absolutely ready, to do that? Because you do have to have that mindset as well. I feel as though sometimes you may have people that feels like because of the pros of having or owning a franchise, they'll think like, oh, well, okay, so it's easy. It's like, no, it's still a business and you still have to, put in effort and you have to put in work. So I think mindset is important. So you have to ask yourself, are you ready? And what are the things that you've done so far? Have you saved the money? Do you have working capital? Have you thought about the type of investment you're going to make, whether it's time-wise or monetary? Yeah, I would think things of that nature. And I feel as though a lot of times they think, even when you ask that question, it'll be the same answer for someone that's just looking to own a business. You know what I mean? Like if you're thinking of starting up a business, there's just certain things that you have to, have put in place, or you should at least have put in place. So you can't think of a franchise any different when it comes to that.
Well, you mentioned the initial investment, and I realize that when you're talking about 3,500 plus franchises, and those are just the ones you represent, there's I don't know how many more than that. I didn't look at the statistics, but I bet the total number of franchises that are out there is probably mind blowing. What should people think about or be prepared for in terms of the range of investments that might be required? I mean, I heard just, I don't know, it probably was wrong, but somebody said, oh, to have a McDonald's franchise, you need to have $500,000 or something like that. So is that really on the high end? I mean, what's the range that's out there?
So yes, the range is definitely, huge, but, because if you're thinking about, franchises like those type of empire brands like McDonald's, then absolutely, it's a lot of red tape for one. And yeah, you're going to have to show, $1 million this and this, it's huge. However, that's why I'm passionate about the business and what I'm doing, is because I'm trying to show people like, wait, stop, look this way, because there's so many others. Like, you like food? Great. I can definitely show you food. And it doesn't have to be McDonald's, but I can show you where here's a lucrative option that is all about food, the food that you're actually interested in. And guess what? It's a fraction of the cost. Like, you know what I mean? So it really does depend. When I do speak with anyone, I do say that you want to at least you want to make sure that you have working capital of or liquidity of at least 25,000, because regardless of the type of franchise that I will show you, that's just a rule of thumb to have at least a 25,000 liquid, because whether you're doing a cash investment or you're looking to going to funding for it, even when you're funding, they still want to see that you have skin in the game. So that's just a rule of thumb that I have. So I'll use that same example. Yes, just coincidentally yesterday that I was speaking about with the healthcare services. Now, for that industry, it is actually a pretty low I think the lowest I've ever seen franchise brand that, offers healthcare services. But even with it being that low, you still want,
How low was it? Just
I would say that, they want to make sure that you have working capital of 15,000.
oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe the franchise fee is actually the franchise fee itself is under 20,000, so total capital, you want to have about 35,000, but that's pretty much all you need for this particular brand. So that's why I always say that, they still want to see that you have a particular amount of working capital. So rule of thumb, you want to make sure that you have at least 25,000 liquid, but it would always boil down to what it is that you're looking to do. So like for businesses that doesn't have a brick and mortar business like this, where, you're working remote and, you're managing or et cetera, yeah, that may work. But if you're looking to own a brand that, not only has a brick and mortar, but like it is a restaurant, then that's, you have to be realistic. It's a restaurant. You have, you have the equipment that's going to build out that's definitely going to be substantially more.
Right.
So that's why it is.
And lots of furnishings and things you
Absolutely.
have to buy. So, it strikes me though, one of the reasons maybe that there aren't as many women or people of color or other underrepresented groups for that matter in franchising. Although that amount is really low, if you're comparing it to McDonald's, that's still a lot of money for a lot of people. Are there options for people to try to finance some of this? I mean, what about people who really want to own a franchise, but maybe just don't have that kind of capital? What advice do you give them?
Yeah, so I run into that where, I may have someone who maybe they've seen me somewhere and maybe they heard me on Clubhouse or something like that. And they, filled out my questionnaire and now we're at a consultation, and they may reveal to me like, hey, listen, I'm really interested. I know I want to own a business and, I appreciate all the information that you provided me. However, I only have about 5,000 saved up. And, so then I may ask them some other questions because a lot of people don't realize as well that if you have a 401k, there's different options that you can do with your 401k as well. But let's say worst case scenario, you don't have any of that, or you're in that building phase, then you're and that's okay. You're in the building phase. What I love about what I'm doing and how I take you through the process is that you're still being educated on it. So even though, let's say you only have 10,000, but based on everything that I have explained to you, that your goal is to own a franchise, and particularly a franchise within, I don't know, let's say the beauty industry or whatever it is that we might have discussed. At least you know what to save for. At least you know that you can stay connected with me because I'm going to provide you with that information. I have webinars that are going to speak to the different brands. I had webinars where I had the funding partner join and really get to tell you insight. And you know what? I'm actually a big fan of SCORE. And I have told many who have sat with me, hey, look up SCORE, see if they're in your area. They're great at mentoring and going through these things. So I always provide the resources so that when they get to that point, and again, just staying connected, they're going to be able to get further insight so that they're able to get to where they need to be to do it. As far as funding, again, depending on the franchise. So, like I'll use yesterday's example. Again, this is actually a very, very low cost for it. So if you only have 10,000 and let's say this is something that that you want to be into, well, you're not that far off, so it's like we can definitely work to get you there. And you can still go for financing. You can absolutely still go for financing. There's a lot of different options within, for funding. It's just that there's no 100% funding. So you have to have skin in the game. So I think that the education piece is part of it, and the research phase. And I use real estate as analogies a lot as well. It's the same type of process as far as like, look, I want to own a home one day, I don't have the money, but I can certainly save. I can certainly learn about the different options and programs, et cetera, that they may have.
You can figure out what the market is and how much you need to save up for the kind of place that you really want.
Right, because there's still going to be criterias, right? There's still going to be a down payment and things of that nature. So it's very similar, very, very in that aspect as well.
I mean, I think those are great insights, Tamika. And the other thing that I guess I would say, and I speak from my own personal experience trying to build a business, is that those numbers may sound kind of high, but if you don't have that kind of capital, you may want to rethink any kind of business ownership, because you can either pay the money in a fairly large chunk all at once, or maybe, staggered in payments to a franchisor. But if you do it yourself, you're going to spend that much at least. And it's just going to be a slow bleed, and probably going to end up being more because you're making lots of mistakes along the way. You pay a web designer and they do it not a very good job. So you have to find somebody else to fix, stuff like that. What are some of the common mistakes that people make in terms of running their franchise? I mean, are there certain characteristics that make people more successful or less successful in building their franchise?
Absolutely. It's simply, those that are going to deviate from the system. If you feel like, I think I can do this better, I think I have another way, and you're not going to execute the way you're being told, you're not going to take advantage of the support, those are where you're going to find, that you're going to be less successful. The ones that are completely embracing everything that this brand has to offer them is going to do phenomenally well. You have to be willing to collaborate. You have to be willing to learn. You can't come in knowing it all. You have to come in as a sponge and execute the system. You have the blueprint. Just follow the directions, speak with the other owners. You have the support system you need to be successful.
Do you have any examples of women who have been successful building a franchise? I mean, I know you talked about the webinar with the moms, and so maybe even talk about one or two of those just to show people that it really is possible.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, some of the women that was on that on that webinar, I believe I had about 4. And there was one with the kitchen concept, there's a cleaning concept, outdoor concepts as far as I think it was called Mosquito Joe's, and it's such a variety, but it featured these women that's doing phenomenally well within these brands, and they're very, very successful. The kitchen tune-up, you definitely want to be a little more, I would say, a little more sales focused on that, because you do have to get out, you do have to speak to people and everything. But a lot of women, they love that. They love that, they're able to, they're great at sales. So that might be something that is right up your alley. There's one woman I'm thinking of that is doing extremely well. She has a coding franchise. And one of the larger brands that I have, the tutoring concept, has basically merged, like they merged forces, where that is now an aspect of or part of the overall brand. So now you have a tutoring concept that has everything that your child or young adult needs, to be tutored, but now they're adding coding to their concept as well. So there's many, many examples that can be provided across different industries. I know that some of the top industries I've been seeing for women has typically, I think travel has been up there as far as top franchises for women. The cleaning sector, which again, I want to definitely make sure to clarify, not you being in the business as far as being the person that cleans, but just managing the team. Right. So things of that nature, anything that's, that's not necessarily a brick and mortar and provides that flexibility has done very well for women in the industry.
Interesting. It strikes me that women in particular could probably draw upon support from each other, just in terms of how to balance business and all the other things that tug at women. What kind of support is out there for women like that? Are there support groups? Some franchises, are they particularly good at helping with that? I mean, what advice would you give to women who struggle with trying to balance their franchise with their family and other obligations?
I would say to definitely take advantage of the brand's mentorship. A lot of time they provide the coaches and mentors, maybe within the first 6 months or a year, or some it'll be ongoing. There's nothing wrong with asking for, let's say the brand provides it for a year. There's always going to be an opportunity to have it extended. So I would say that that's something that's important to look for. I would also say even joining your local chambers and things of that nature, companies, organizations such as SCORE. There's so many different organizations, that I think is also important to join. Aside from what the support your franchisor, is providing you, that is important for women to get involved in, because, it's just needed, whether you are someone who has kids or not. I feel as though there's a lot of different organizations that you can definitely be involved in that's going to provide you that extra support. And, again, I just did an interview with someone who that is her whole focus is. She has I think it's a Facebook group where it's all about, moms in business. So getting connected with groups like that, I think is very important as well.
Well, you make a great point. I think historically women have not probably been as, I don't want to say aggressive, but have been as diligent and committed to networking as our male counterparts historically. And, we women need to network, and it's good for our business. It's good for our psyche. It's good for our personal lives as well, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
So we started with your business, and we're going to circle back to your business. Talk about some of the advantages of using a franchise consultant or broker like yourself, because, wow, there's a lot of franchises out there, and I'm going to guess that some of them are not as strong as others. Talk about your role in helping people find franchises and maybe advice for helping people avoid some of the risky or less desirable franchises or business models.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do get this a lot. And I love the aha moments as well. So I would say in one word, clarity. Just gaining the clarity, because I feel like what tends to happen is that you want to own a business. You kind of heard about franchises. So you do a search and you're just bombarded with a bunch of stuff. And, and unfortunately, you might kind of go down a rabbit hole. You might click on a couple of things, you might fill out some things, and either you get extremely overwhelmed or just never followed up with. So, working with someone like me is going to provide you extreme clarity. We have the data, we have the insight, not only for brands, but it's just to be able to understand you so that we're able to properly match you with the right businesses that you may not even have considered or heard of or come across, just based on our consultations with you and some of the resources that I do utilize to help aid me in that process. So you have an internal advocate as well. As I said, I make sure that I'm joining the calls with you, because sometimes, you might have a question that maybe a little bit too shy to ask that question.
Or they don't think to ask the question because
Absolutely.
They don't have the experience and perspective that you have.
Absolutely. And actually that brings me to another point, is that I also provide you with a document that I have where it's great questions to ask franchisors. I give this to you beforehand so that you get to see the types of questions that you can ask. And of course, you may come with questions as well, but it's just a great tool to have as to see I never would have thought to ask this. And I see why that may be important. And they will ask it. And if I thought that there was something that you didn't tap into, I'll speak up for you, and I'll ask it, or I will circle back and say, hey, I know that this was a concern. Can you elaborate more on this for this particular candidate and things of that nature? And then what I also do is recap calls. After every call with a franchisor, I always have a quick call right after where I ask them, okay, what did you think about that? How did you feel? Did you have any questions? Because there you come to the point where you're probably more comfortable speaking with me, and you'll tell me what the concerns are.
Right.
And that way I'll be able to provide you further either insight into that or advice as far as what we can do. Like, you know what, those are great points. I'll get those answers for you, or let's have another call where I would address that, things of that nature.
I would guess you could waste a lot of time trying to do this on your own.
Yeah.
How are you compensated? Is this like an hourly rate or?
No. I'm glad you asked that. And again, I like to use real estate because it's just the perfect example. And I feel like people just really understand it when I use real estate analogies. So such as a real estate agent, when you are ready to buy your home and you give them your information, you tell them like, hey, this is what I like, this is the type of kids I have, this is why I like this area. Their job then is to go back into their inventory and they come back with some options for you. And you guys go ahead, you look at a couple of homes until a decision is made. But you do not pay that real estate agent for that process. They're compensated by the owner. So I work in a very similar fashion. I'm not compensated by these consultations and being your internal advocate. I am compensated by the brand within. They have a market budget for people such as myself, where if they are within the inventory, they normally have a set rate that they would pay consultants to bring great candidates for them to consider. So I'm compensated by the brand, and I don't work for any one particular brand.
I don't want to come in too heavy-handed, but I have to say, well, that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, somebody to help guide you through the process and educate you and be your advocate that you don't even pay for. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So, Tamika, we're just about out of time. If people are interested in learning more about franchising or what's the best way for them to reach you?
Absolutely. So they can go straight to my website. It is precisionfranchise.com. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Precision Franchise. And furthermore, I do want to implore you to definitely make sure that when you go onto the website, you should, by the time this air, see a pop-up for the upcoming webinars that I have. The webinars that I do put together are free. It's free for you to join. So just you going onto my website, you're able to sign up for things like that. You're able to join my email list where you would always be invited for when I am doing things such as that. I also have the resources available on my website. So if you just wanted to say, you know what, I think I want to learn a little bit more about the industry and how someone such as yourself can help me, I have a free e-course that is on my website that you can get. So you're not obligated to have a consultation or anything with me. You can just stay connected and just get the resources until you feel motivated enough to have a further conversation. And I would also offer, Doris, to anyone, to your listeners, I know we touched on a couple of webinars that I have, such as Moms and Franchising. If you are interested and would like to see these webinars, if anyone that's listening would like to get that, I will be more than happy to send them to you. All they would have to do is they can shoot me an email, which they can contact me from my website, and just let them know, like, hey, I was on the Savvy Entrepreneur, and I would love to see Moms in Franchising, and I would absolutely send that to you. So my name is spelled Tamika, and it's Tamika at precisionfranchise.com. You can feel free to shoot me an email, or again, visit my website. The resources are there for you.
Thanks again for being on the show this week.
Thank you so much, Doris. It was awesome.
Again, a special thanks to Tamika Franklyn, my guest today, who is the founder of Precision Franchise, talking today not just about franchising, but a lot about women in franchising and why it's such a great model for women. You can find more helpful information and resources on my website, globalocityservices.com. I'd love to hear from you with comments, questions, suggestions. Email me at dnagel, Nagel, at lakesradio.org. I promise you'll always get a response back from me. Be sure to join me again next Saturday at 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern. But until then, I'm Doris Nagel, wishing you happy entrepreneuring.